to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. We're found in a lot of places. You can go on the LTVEH website to find the show. In fact, you can find past shows. We also air East Hampton and east of East Hampton on Cablevision Channel 20 3 times a week. You will find us on YouTube, but on YouTube you really have to look for my full name, Linda Maria Frank. That's my channel. And you'll find probably, I would say at this point, 150 different authors. Most of the authors are local. I would say 99% of them are local. So if you're interested in local talent and you're interested in reading and writing and finding out how a book gets made, then I would definitely recommend that you look at some of those shows. We're on Facebook. The name of the Facebook page, guess what, is The Writer's Dream. And if you're interested in the show, you can message me there. Also, we are on Cablevision Channel 20 west of East Hampton, and that is on Friday afternoons at 3 o'clock. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest today, Dr. Mitch Maiman. And he has such an impressive biography that I am going to read it. He became a physician at age 24 and is now retired. As a specialist in obstetrics and gynecology and subspecialist in gynecological oncology, he has had a distinguished academic, clinical, and research career in medicine and served as both a director of gynecological oncology and chairman of obstetrics and gynecology at major New York City-based university hospitals. He has been recognized for his numerous educational contributions in the field and his devotion and commitment to the teaching of residents and fellows. Mitch lives with his wife, Dr. Judy Levy, on Long Island, New York, and is an avid tennis player and practitioner of yoga. So you're a busy guy.
Now I'm a writer of sorts.
But now Dr. Maiman, Mitch, is in the world of writing fiction based on his experiences. So you have 2 books. Would you like to tell me about the first one first, and then we'll get into...
Well, the first one is
feature
called
book.
Every Third Night, and that wasn't much of a reach for me, Linda. It takes place in a in a residency program in the 1980s, and it's really part expose, part love story. But
What's in it?
mostly, it's just a story that depicts the journey of what some of my colleagues in medicine had to go through in their medical training. And it's really a psychological thriller. So that was very close to my heart, but I didn't really have to reach too far.
Right.
Because again, that was my wheelhouse.
Based on life experiences, right?
Yeah, it was fiction. Nothing actually happened, but everything in that book could have happened.
So it's a psychological thriller?
I thought that's how
Sort
I
of
would
like
classify it.
sort of like those Robin Cook books, huh?
A little bit. Hopefully with a deep message also.
Yeah. So what's the deep message?
Well, in that book,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna have to punt on that, but
Okay.
it really for medical people, it really hits home because they're in the medical field, and for them to understand what the training was like and the abuses we had to go through really hits home. For the layperson, it's really eye-opening.
Oh, I see. I see. Yes. Well, that was, I guess back in the 80s, that became kind of a scandal, the fact that they kept the interns
Right.
up and awake for so many hours that they were making mistakes with patients.
We worked 110 hours a
It
week.
was crazy. Yeah.
But this novel that we're talking about today, The Rainbow Diary, is quite different.
Yes. I can
Because
see that.
it begins with a guy on his deathbed, and for me to be real about that, it was much more of a reach than my first novel.
I see that. Yeah. So the book is The Rainbow Diary, fiction based again on reality. Available on Amazon. Where else is it available?
Barnes and Nobles, most of the major websites.
Have you put it in any of the bookstores, the indie bookstores on Long Island?
I think not in real time, but online it is.
Okay, because there's a number of them You go on the website, scroll down, and you fill out a form, and then you can have the book in the bookstore. So it's a good way of marketing. So tell me what happens to this gentleman who is diagnosed with cancer.
Well, the inspiration for the book was when my good friend Alan, who the book is dedicated to, many years ago came down with some horrible cancer and obviously died prematurely from that. He never really had a chance. Probably the whole thing took less than 2 years. And at that time, it was traumatic for me. And it was very difficult for me to watch his family and his kids. He had three sons go through, what many families go through when they have a loved one die prematurely. And I felt I had to write something to try to bring them some type of peace and solace, some way to be able to comfort them in the wake of about to lose a loved one. And that's really what began my journey through this book.
Yeah, so I imagine that in your field, you've treated a number of patients who have died prematurely.
Well, again, I was an oncologist, a gynecologic oncologist, and a cancer surgeon. So I felt that I was in a unique position to describe some of these things. I had my own patients. I discussed death with them. I was the one who had to give them bad news. I had to give them news if their cancer recurred. And I also understood what it's like to be going through a chemotherapy, to be subject to the pros and cons of the flawed medical system we have. So I felt that if I could accurately depict this process of getting diagnosed and then all the setbacks and some winning times too, and also physiologically what it's like to be in the last few hours of life, what's happening to your brain, what's happening to your body. If I could present that authentically, then the story I wanted to tell about dying and then the afterlife would be much more easily for people to be able to really buy into.
Yeah, well, being a cancer survivor myself, I was first diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 54. 54? Yeah, 53. And they told me that's pretty young for being diagnosed with breast cancer, which I didn't really believe. But the thing that happens to you is, the first thing that happens to you, of course, is the shock, and you cry and you carry on and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you feel like, I did anyway, I felt like I was suspended somewhere above life, watching everybody else have life, and I was suspended there. And
Well, I think you're
and
describing something that's very common,
yeah, I
very
think so
accurate.
too. I think so too. I don't think I'm different from anybody else. And then you start to think about, okay, what if I die? What do I have to do? What's it going to be like? How am I going to feel? You know, it's all these questions, and then of course you never feel safe again.
And what do you want to accomplish in the time you have left?
What do you want to say?
My book brings up issues of forgiveness and redemption, and love and fatherhood that someone may have to suddenly come to terms with when they get a bad diagnosis. And in this particular book, I made the protagonist quite young, in his 40s, so that suddenly he would really have to confront some of these things and embark on a very unique journey.
Yeah, it's something that I think is it's very needed, because so many people, for so many reasons, it isn't even facing a premature, it's facing death at any age, I think, because death is something that happens to somebody else.
Right. And I feel that the more we can do that, the more prepared we are. And that could happen at any age. I think that will affect what happens after that.
Well, I found that you never feel really safe again, but I also discovered a peace, because I said, yeah, I am going to die someday. And so I had to like come to grips with certain aspects of my personality, problems I hadn't solved and whatnot. And I said, I better make myself my best friend.
Well, you described something that actually was a process I went through in writing the book. I told you the inspiration to write the book, but I felt also that I was kind of stuck because I was overcome with fear myself. Here was my friend who was my age. We went through medical school together. We went through the ranks together. We had similar families. And now all of a sudden, he's dying prematurely, and now all of a sudden the fear and anxiety in me just crept up, and I couldn't handle it. And in fact, I started the book and I put it down. I put it down for years.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't really complete it. And then something fairly unique happened about 5 years ago. I got a bad break with my own health. And for about a year, doctors couldn't help me. My symptoms were getting worse, and therapy wasn't helpful. And for that period of time, I believed I was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the words began to flow. That's when I began to be able to write it, because now I could become that character. I wasn't writing about or imagining someone else. I was the protagonist, whose name in the book is Kenneth Tauber.
Right.
And by being able to become that person, everything became much more authentic. And hopefully that's reflected in how the readers perceive the words.
Well, I think there are, there are so many people who are going through, even if they don't die, there's that whole feeling of, I don't know how this is gonna work out. And of course, I try to be encouraging. I was sitting in the waiting room in a women's clinic just a few months ago. I forget what I was there for. Oh, bone density. Um, and of course, most of the women who were in there for mammographies. And I looked at this one woman next to me who appeared to be about the same age as myself. And I said, "This is the most hated room in the world, isn't it?" And we started to laugh. And I said, "But don't worry." I said, "I was here 20 some odd, I was here 14 years ago, and then I was here 28 years ago. And I'm still here. I'm still here." And I try to do that whenever I go for one of those tests, and I see the women there and I know what they're going through that.
Well, it's a very optimistic viewpoint you have. And in trying to create this character, I tried to create an atmosphere of hope and optimism as this dying man in the last few hours of his life embarks on his journey. And how can one create a milieu of hope and optimism with death? Well, it happens to do what's going to happen in the afterlife.
Right.
And the book is really showing how after one dies, it could just be a continuation of life itself based
Well,
on the type of life you led.
yeah, well, I think that's probably what you try to achieve is peace. It isn't so much hope. If a person has terminal cancer, there's no hope, but there's peace. There's a certain peace you'll find.
But for the survivors, for the spouse, for the children, the fact that their loved one, in this case the father, is going away, I needed to write something that can show them he's not going away. He's not just going to always be there in mind, but in this particular person's afterlife, which I believe will be mine, he can still view things. He can't talk, obviously, but he can still see. He can still see a newborn grandchild. He can still see things that are happening, and he can still love. And that's a message that's hard to sell in the face of the dying and death, but that created the challenge for me.
Yeah, I mean, being the age that I am and probably close to your age, is the people who are important to you in life, who, like your friend who already died, they're still with you. They're always with you because they're part of your life experience. And you try to, impart that message. It's very, obviously, you know this better than I do because you've done it so often, but it's very hard to talk to people who are in that grieving process and make them understand that, it's part of life. Death is part of life, but the person never leaves you.
And other people tend to be very afraid in the face of death because it's scary for them. So you have a lot of experiences where people kind of just take a step back, and families and loved ones can feel very isolated during this time. But one of the lines I wrote in the book was, they say that youth is wasted on the young. In a way, life is wasted on the living, because as this man is dying and then he enters into this afterlife, he's just seeing so many things now that if he knew when he was living, he might have done things a little differently. And I think we all say that as we get older, about youth.
Yeah, somebody asked me a few weeks ago, if I could time travel, where would I go back to? And I'm looking at all these, eras, the 50s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, so on down the line. I said, no, I don't want to go back to any of it.
Right.
If I could go back, knowing what I know now, maybe I would go back and change a few things. But I think we waste a lot of time on things that aren't important, I guess.
Now, one of the biggest challenges in my book was, which is a rather unique presentation, is the book alternates between past and present. One chapter is present and then is past. And if you think about it, I mean, a book just based on the last 2 or 3 hours of someone's life as he's dying is going to be really hard. I mean, it's like a
Right.
stream of consciousness novel. That's a hard sell.
But that's a
So
good
by going
device.
back and forth, I created a past for the reader, that what this man's life was like, not just when he was a young adult, but when he was a child himself. And people ask, where do I get the name The Rainbow Diary? Where did that come from? Well, it describes one of his experiences when he was a kid, the first time he saw a rainbow. And what better symbol for eternal life, okay, than a rainbow? So I believe that by incorporating this symbol that was so important to him, okay, into his death and afterlife process, it was a very important representation. And I would like to think that everybody, okay, when it's their time, that they'll have their own wonderful things that were part of their life that represents hope and optimism, and that this will become part of their experience.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very important message for people to, and I think most people don't do it, is to face the fact that yes, you will die, and what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Because you think you can't do anything about it, but there are things you can do about it. I think as I said before, I think it's a matter of finding peace. But if you were to consider a roadmap from your book of how to die, what would you say?
Well, I think that when it comes that time and you don't have much time left, there are a lot of things that one should be accomplishing, and a big thing is forgiveness.
Okay,
All
good.
right. I mean, some of the things that should guide us in life, love and peace and serenity and forgiveness, and not anger and jealousy and envy and hate. Okay, all these negative emotions that we're all plagued with. I think that bring out those positive emotions, bring out that positive energy. And if there's things that you have to forgive people for, or you have to be forgiven yourself, and now's the time. All right, and it's never too early to start that.
And also, those negative emotions hurt you more than they do the other person.
Oh, there's no question about it.
The target of your anger is, they may not even know it, and you're eating yourself up.
No, everybody, Linda, has their own conception of what happens. Some people say, well, I die, nothing, there's nothing, everything just stops. Other people are based on religious or spiritual concerns. So everybody, has some kind of predisposing attitude towards it now. And what I tried to do by making the medicine real and the physiology real and the conversations real, similar to conversations I have with my own patients in my 40-plus year career in medicine, was I tried to create an afterlife that was plausible. And you could say, well, how can an afterlife be plausible? But that's what I tried to do, so that it could give it back to families, for sons and daughters and wives and husbands who are about to grieve, and make them say, well, why not? Why not?
Yeah, no, I think it's very important. I have a very dear friend who does not believe in an afterlife, and I say, I have a science background as well, as you do, and I say it's a law of thermodynamics. Matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed nor changed in form. So when you die, you change in form. What happened? If you view a dead person, you see a live person, then you see them dead. What's missing? Something is missing. Okay, not just the chemical functions, but something's missing there. Where did it go?
Right, and I believe in writing the book that the body is really just the vehicle, okay, and that the soul continues on. And I had to do a little bit of research for this book. My first one, like I said, I didn't have to do much research because
It was the life
it was really my
experience.
life. And I believe that for all fiction to be real, it has to be semi-autobiographical. But for this one, I read about people's experiences. I read about people who thought they were gone and came back, and what their experiences were like. And the remarkable thing was, when I was exploring this, was I had already written the ending to this book, And then when I went back and compared it with other people said they went through, there were so many similarities.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought maybe I got it right.
Yes, yes, I think so. But that's a wonderful, it's a wonderful thing to give people food for thought. So for that reason, it, first of all, it sounds like a very engaging, emotionally engaging book, but a book with a very good message. And I like the idea that the other one's a thriller. So tell me about what your journey through publishing was.
Well, I did one thing most of my life, which was medicine. I started medical school when I was 20. I was a doctor at 24, and I did that almost strictly up until I retired. So I had to enter a whole new world with no skills whatsoever, and it was challenging,
Yeah, I know. I was a teacher for years, and then all of a sudden I
But
decided to write books.
you
And
make your mistakes, and obviously you get
yeah,
help. You can't do it by yourself. You need editors, and you need content editors, and you need proofreaders. You need all those things, and you're still going to make mistakes. I would like to think that some of the things that maybe I got wrong in my first novel, I've corrected to
mhm.
some degree.
Did you self-publish?
All self-published, as
Okay.
you know, like 99% of people do today. But self-publishing doesn't mean you just sit in a room
No, I know.
and
Tell
you
me about
write.
it.
I mean, some of the self-publishing companies are very, very
It's more work than if
different
you
from
had a
each other.
traditional
Um,
publisher.
but the nice thing about it is it's yours. And
Mhm.
I don't know where any of this will take me. I'm already starting on my third novel, but it's nice to know that it's yours. And one of the gifts I've had in this process, Linda, is that I'm not looking for another career. So I
Mhm.
really just write for joy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course I want
Mhm.
people to read books, my books, and I want it to sell, and I have people to help me with that. No question about that. But I don't feel like I'm on any deadline. I write when I feel like it. If I want to write for 3 hours one day, I write. If I don't want to write for 2 weeks, I don't have to write. And I'm not writing to write a beach novel, all right? I'm only writing things where I have a message to something to say, all right? And that's a luxury that obviously many authors who do this as a career and they have to keep, just getting things out, they don't have that. So I think that's why I want to always keep it a joy rather
Of
than
course.
a burden.
Of course. Well, I think a book like this, the journey that you went through to write this book, was important for you to come to some conclusions about your own life. And that's really one of the untold happy things about writing is oftentimes when you're writing a book, you solve a problem in your own life. So even my books, which are mystery stories for kids, it's amazing the things that I work through when I'm writing the book.
Well,
But
I
you have
agree. I
a
can't tell you how many times I cried in writing both these books. It almost seems like every chapter I was crying. So you're so accurate. It was so cathartic to be able to write. And when you have that kind of emotion when you're writing, you get the feeling that you're on the right path.
Yeah, I think so too. But you have a natural marketplace for these books. I mean, these books should be in every oncologist's office.
Well, I think that the Rainbow Diary should be in every geriatrician's office.
That
I think
too.
that I think
Oh, yeah.
and some of them have already commented how it's been very helpful for their own patients
Yeah,
to
but have
read
you looked into that?
as they get older. So, yes, we have, and uh, more than anything else, this book incites contemplation.
Hmm.
Or it makes you think about things in different ways, and to me, that's the gift of art. All right, whether you're painting a painting or writing a novel or making a movie, you want to move people. And even if you move people, some people will say, well, it could be depressing writing about something like this or reading something about this. But if it elicits emotion, that's why that's
Yeah.
why we're all in art, to do that kind of thing and affect people.
Yeah,
And
that's what I say about my books is it I want my readers to fall in love with my characters. And if I accomplish that, the rest of it is okay.
and because of that, now that you mentioned characters, I write in a different way that I think many authors write. I have no plan. I don't know where the book is going to end. I don't know what the plot is. I create the characters, and as the characters evolve, that dictates what's going to
Mhm.
happen next and next and next. And some experienced authors, might say, well, how do you not know where you're going? Always know where you're going. I eventually get there, but to me, I don't know who the characters are yet. All right, and as I write and the characters become who they are, then I know what's going to come next and next and next. And eventually I'll get to the plot in my own good time, but I think that really makes the characters authentic.
I think so too, yeah. Well, you're taking a journey with your characters. So, yeah, I think so. So, you're writing another book.
Yes, I just started it. Um, I don't have a title yet, but to me, I asked myself, how can I create an even greater challenge? And like I said, in my first book, it was not that hard. It was about a doctor. In this book, it was about a dying man, and I told you how I got there. Well, the protagonist in this third book is going to be a young woman. So that's really going to be a reach for me. And until recently,
Talk to your wife.
um, well, I will tell her she's a young woman for sure. So thank you for that advice.
There you go.
But
Well, she was at one time,
oh,
I'm
she
sure.
still is. She still is a beautiful young woman. But with this book, how do I become something that's so foreign to me? Okay, a young woman. And until recently, I didn't know where it was going, but something hit me in the middle of the night when I wake up and get a lot of my ideas. And then finally, I saw I have a path. And now that I know I have this path, then I'm pretty sure now I can write this. And it'll be hard, and I'm sure I'll do a lot of crying too. But I need to me, it's like becoming a method actor in a theater production. You become the protagonist, you have to be that person in order to write honestly. So that's where my challenge is going to be. How do I become a 27-year-old woman? But like I said, I think I can get there.
Well, I think you've given us some very good advice on how to get into a character. We have a few seconds left. Would you like to just say one thing quickly that you haven't said already?
Well, I would just like to encourage anybody who's self-publishing like I do, and especially since COVID, I think there are 2 million new books a year being published, and almost every single one, like 98 or 99%, are self-published. Um, and I think some of the best books out there are self-published. If all we do is read what's on the best-selling list, we're reading the same books over and over and over again. There was recently an online article that said the 10 best books that have nobody knows about. And I
Thank you,
think that's
Mitch.
what we should look at.
Thank you very much. And here we are. Didn't
Thank
that
you,
go
Linda.
fast?